so another way of moving off center is something we call amnesia. And it's forgetting our center, forgetting our core. It's not being moved off our core by an emotional force necessarily, and that seeing that emotional force clearly, but it's actually moving off center as a kind of avoidance technique. And in amnesia, there are many signs and signals that we're choosing something other than alignment with our core principles and values. We're choosing something else.
I experience amnesia to be a kind of lulling to sleep almost that comes sometimes from finding myself in conditions that are really different from the principles and values that I hold to be part of my own core. And it can even sometimes feel like a subtle migration towards finding myself engaging or kind of forgetting what it feels like to be on center and forgetting what matters most and what my primary orientation in the world is about.
And it's a drift that can happen almost without one noticing it. So the drift is happening, and then you're someplace else that's not center and not in alignment.
To give even a more specific example, one of the places where I can almost guarantee I will experience some form of amnesia is when I go back to spend time with my family of origin. A group of people who I love dearly, but who remember who and how I was when I was 16, 17, 18. And there's something about being in that context that often leads me to some of the signs and signals of amnesia, which are kind of responding from old default patterns. Things unfold and I find myself saying things that I might have said when I was a teenager, falling into rhythms of a day that are not actually the rhythms that I know help me to remember and stay attuned to my core self.
One of the sure things for me to notice that I'm drifting into amnesia land is that I'm choosing things in my life, when I have downtime or when I have space, that none of which are born by my natural curiosity, or none of which actually are renewing of myself, but are comfortable in an old way that is slightly passive.
Yeah, it has this feeling of active sleepwalking on some level. And so this is another force, not unlike triggering, that has the potential to lead us to respond and engage the world from a place that's not in alignment with our core of integrity. And we have a sense that there may be some different signs and signals for amnesia and different practices for state shifting related to amnesia. And we wanted to walk through a couple of those and use both triggering and amnesia as two examples of external forces that can kind of knock us off our center, and begin the practice during this 2-week module of really looking for other forces and honing our ability to return to center and stand in our strengths as deeply as we can.
And the first sign is checking out, finding ways to check out from what is, from what's present in our lives, and turning so that we can kind of turn away from what is, but in a way that feels more like drifting away from what is, so that it disappears. The what is that's difficult kind of disappears into peripheral vision and then not seen at all.
Another sign and signal has to do with a kind of release of responsibility. What Eve Tuck refers to as a move to innocence, where if that drifting away can actually lead to a sense of disaffectedness and not feeling responsible for how we show up in the world and the impacts that the way we show up might have in the people and beings around us.
And another one is when we have a sense that we're returning to the same obstacles and challenges over and over and over again. I call it the gerbil wheel. That I know I've been here before. I know I've been here before. But each time, even when people are telling me I've been here before, that what they're telling me sounds new. each time.
And maybe the last one that we'll name, which is again an incomplete list, but is an orientation toward comfort. So I know that I'm in amnesia land where all I really want to do is do the thing that's going to actually be the thing that's most comfortable, and that comfort becomes a kind of self-medication, and it allows me the opportunity to not turn toward the places where there are opportunities for learning and growth and curiosity, but to actually go back to the place where I don't have to do any of that. And the longer that I stay there, if I recognize a pattern, I mean, of course, we all need comfort. This is not an argument against comfort, but when I fall into a pattern of doing that over and over again, I can tell that I've lost my center, and it's often an expression of amnesia.
And comfort can look really different to different people. Sometimes the continuous reciting of the problem narrative is a comfortable place. And it recenters kind of your person, that part of you in a way that you know really well. So comfort looks really different to different people, and I think that finding out what that comfort is that makes you forget what holds you upright and what really renews you, that's the kind of comfort that we're really pointing to.
So like in triggering, there are all kinds of different practices that can be used to state shift to get back to center. We're going to name a couple and invite you to explore the ones that really work well for you that exist on this list or off of this list. One is the practice of radical self-care. We may have talked about this previously, but radical self-care isn't doing the thing that is just the comfortable thing. It's actually doing the thing that we know is best for our thriving and our well-being and our learning, even when it's the thing that is least comfortable, so that we know that after having done it, we will actually have taken the best care of ourselves from the big picture, even if it didn't feel like the most comfortable act and choice in the moment.
It's those moments you've had when you say, I know this would be really, really good for me, but I don't want to do it.
And you do it anyway.
And you do it anyway. Another is anchors. Finding anchors and returning to anchors, either whether they're relationships with humans or non-humans, and anchoring practices, things that ground you back towards yourself.
Other practices are things that might help us remember. For me, that can actually be a kind of audit of previous experiences, going back and rereading my journals to discover some of the things and the insights that have illuminated themselves in previous moments that I might have forgotten.
Another thing is our touchstones, and these can be mantras, affirmations, restating our aspirations and intentions. When they bring up the life of those to us, when it's not just the words, restating them from a place of giving them breath and life again.
Awareness practices are another approach that we can use to recenter, particularly ones that decenter myself. Mm-hmm. So practices like acts of generosity and practices of gratitude that help me to remember my place in an interdependent network of beings, part of a larger ecosystem, is another one.
And the last one that is really useful for some people is to have a structure in my life that has some of these practices in it, and that I return to on a regular basis as part of the structure of my life, so that when I fall away, I have something already in place that brings me back. And so for some people, that kind of structure is really useful.
So that's a little bit of a sense of some of the signs and signals of amnesia, as well as some state shifting approaches. In our experience, engaging with amnesia is largely about recognition of the pattern, which can be really hard because it can sneak up on us, and using those structures, habit patterns, practices to help us remember, help us state shift back to center.
And I would return here to the idea of journaling, because there is something about going back and reviewing that you can recognize some things that you might not recognize if you're just thinking back, particularly if amnesia is something that is a recurring pattern, which it is for everyone in some way. But if it's a stronger pattern for you, that journaling is a really good way to try to track that.
So as this module unfolds over these next couple weeks, we invite you to do some of that tracking, to experiment, to try and hold lightly some of these ideas, and to use these 2 weeks to try and refine our abilities to return to center, whether that experience is precipitated by some of these external or internal conditions that can create amnesia, or external conditions that might create triggering. How do we get back to center? And we really believe that being able to spend more time standing in our strength, standing in our center, is absolutely fundamental to our ability to create change in the world that's reflective of what we actually want to see unfold in the world, and to be able to tap into the sources of wisdom that are going to help us see our way forward in a meaningful way. So look forward to learning together and using the dialogue forum as a place to share some of our learnings around all of that.